Breaking news is that Burkina Faso President Ibrahim Traoré has accused African leaders of beggary. The 35-year-old president, who came to power in a coup and became the world's youngest leader, Traoré thanked Russian President Vladimir Putin for deciding to send free grain to African countries and expressed that Africa should become self-sufficient in food by the next soon. My generation does not understand this. How can Africa, which has so much wealth, become the poorest continent in the world today? And why African leaders travel the world to beg, he said. On the other hand, the situation in Niger is even getting worse. And let me say that the recent military coup in Niger Republic has widely stripped naked what could be the remaining cover of the treacherous, unethical, and repugnant role of France in Africa that had been before the coup in Niger. The mission of the white man invading Africa 1000s of years ago was to conquer, steal, exploit, and occupy the continent for his own development. All his deeds were centered only on what he could get from Africa and how to drain the continent for his sustenance. Everything he brought to Africa was evil and for his selfish interest. Sadly, his mission of exploitation centuries ago still remains the same today. The only change he altered was his strategy. While we all must condemn military coups, we must as Africans embrace the reality that the gathering of imperialists and the threat of military attack in Niger Republic by France, the US, Britain, and their conspiring allies are not for the interest of Africa. These countries have a history of what Macron called evil that is still going on in Africa. And wherever they gather on issues concerning Africa, like it is currently in Niger Republic, is equal to the Berlin Conference of 1884, where they came together and cruelly balkanized African territories for their interests. The leaders of these countries have no record of being fair to Africa or showing respect to African leaders.
Among the leaders spearheading this renewed African spirit is Ibrahim Traoré, the 35-year-old military leader from Burkina Faso. Traoré has consistently voiced his opposition to Western exploitation and agendas in Africa whenever the opportunity arose. His unwavering commitment to this cause was evident during the Russia-African Summit in St. Petersburg on July 27–28, 2023, where he fearlessly addressed the issues. Traoré began his address by highlighting the often overlooked contributions of Russia and Africa in the fight against Nazism. He then delved into the paradoxical situation of Africa, a continent abundantly blessed with resources yet labeled as the poverty capital of the world today. He passionately criticized the Western nations, particularly their exploitation in Burkina Faso, shedding light on how they manipulated information to portray the country in a negative light on the global stage, despite their own detrimental actions within the nation. Traoré went as far as indirectly condemning African leaders who succumbed to becoming puppets of Western powers. He said, "As for Burkina Faso, for the past 8 years we have been fighting the most barbaric and cruel form of colonialism and imperialism, which are forcing a modern form of slavery on us. We have learned one thing very well. A slave who cannot protest deserves nothing more than pity, and his future is miserable. We did not wait for anyone to take care of us. We decided to fight the terrorists who are preventing our development. In this struggle, our courageous people decided to take up arms against terrorism. We were surprised to learn that imperialists refer to them as armed groups or militarized groups, while calling people in Europe who take up arms to defend their homeland patriots. Our forefathers were deported to save Europe, and this happened against their will. But when they came back and tried to assert their basic rights, they faced cruel repression. The problem is not when people decide to take up arms. The problem is that the leaders of African countries do not bring anything to people fighting imperialism, calling us armed groups or criminals. We do not agree with this approach. We, the heads of African states, must stop acting as puppets ready to act whenever the imperialists pull the strings." At the United Nations 78th General Assembly, Ibrahim Traoré, represented by Burkina Faso's Minister of State, Bassoul Mabazi, dismissed reports suggesting that Burkina Faso had formally established a relationship with the Russian military company Wagner Group in an effort to curb militant and jihadist insurgents. However, he made it clear that Burkina Faso would enter into sovereign partnerships with whomever it chooses and buy its defense assets from whomever it chooses. Whether a country is called Russia, Iran, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Cuba, Nicaragua, or North Korea, Burkina Faso will freely buy and sell its products there without any intermediary, let alone authorization from anyone else. He clearly stated this to convey the message that the Ibrahim Traoré-led government of Burkina Faso would not be a puppet to any nation, regardless of their size or global influence, making it evident to Western powers that the country stands firm in its independence and decision-making. Before we continue, if you find this video engaging, please show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel. With that said, let's proceed. Kenya President William Ruto said, "We as Africa have come to the world, not to ask for alms, charity, or handouts, but to work with the rest of the global community and give every human being in this world a decent chance of security and prosperity." This statement underscores that African leaders have grown weary of the prolonged history of Africa being perceived as beggars, satisfied with meager aid. The continent refuses to be a victim of a post-World War II order any longer. Africa stands as a global power in its own right and demands equal partnerships, rejecting the notion of being sidelined and offered aid that only cripples its nations. The African continent relies heavily on foreign aid for its development needs, receiving the largest share of total global aid, according to the Paris-based Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Still, it continues to suffer from a global financial system that forces its countries to pay 8 times more than the wealthiest European nations, resulting in surging debt that eats up what is left of dwindling government revenues. In 2022, Africa's total public debt reached $1.8 trillion, 40 times more than the 2022 budget of the continent's largest country, Nigeria, according to the UN's Agency for Trade and Development. Africa has no need for partnerships based on official development aid that is politically oriented and tantamount to organized charity. President Félix Antoine Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of the Congo said, "Trickling subsidies filtered by the selfish interests of donors will certainly not allow for a real and effective rise of our continent." Félix Tshisekedi firmly asserted that Africa does not require aid that would hinder the progress and development of its nations. Tshisekedi's country, DR Congo, has the world's largest reserves of cobalt and is also one of the largest producers of copper, both critical for clean energy transition, but the nation is one of the poorest in the world. In fact, given the abundant resources in DR Congo, it would not be an overstatement to consider the country the poorest. What Africa needs, according to Mozambican President Filipe Nyusi, is a more inclusive global financial system. In such a system, Nyusi said, Africans can participate as a partner that has a lot to offer to the world, and not only a warehouse that supplies cheap commodities to countries or international multinational corporations. Ghana's President, Nana Akufo-Addo, blamed Africa's present-day challenges on historical injustices and called for reparations for the slave trade. President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa said the continent is poised to regain its position as a site of human progress, despite dealing with a legacy of exploitation and subjugation. What do you think about these? How can African countries break free from Western influence and pave the way for the continent's development?
Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest content. We'll be back with more exciting videos, so stay tuned. Until next time, have a wonderful day and take care.